thank the organizers of this session. And I would like to thank Enis for presenting his presentation about the multiverse. I would rather talk about the scientific part, not the philosophical part. As we have seen, Enis, most of his lecture or his talk was about from the philosophical point of view. But I want to rather concentrate on the scientific part and also to elaborate the public interest in this question of multiverse. First of all, as Enis has already mentioned, the multiverse is a hypothesis, not a law. It's not a theory. It was proposed to explain the quantum measurement problem, the Anthropic Principle, and other problems with modern physics and cosmology. The hypothesis has not been verified until now, despite claims by some people like Max Tegmark that there are observational evidence which verifies the existence of multiverse. There is no direct observational evidence, as already stressed by George Ellis. The notion of multiverse is an artifact of some theoretical works. It has actually 3 or 4 sources. One of them is the inflation theory and string theory, and also the M theory, which was developed later. The idea is intriguing indeed, and seems to be a generalization of the Copernican principle. So in basic thought, one would prefer to have a multiverse rather than one universe. But unfortunately, the notion of a multiverse has been exaggerated so much by some popular scientists to make it more like a fairy tale, not a science. And George Ellis has already mentioned this in his article in the Scientific American, from which Enis has already quoted part of it. What most astrophysicists and cosmologists, including George Ellis and myself, believe is that this universe may extend to larger domains in a larger space. Yes, we know that our horizon, observational horizon, is not a final limit. We may have space so large, it could be even infinitely large, to accommodate domains or regions of space-times, but then these regions have the same laws of physics. Same laws of physics apply everywhere. So you may call it multiverse, multi-domain, or multi-regions. This what is the scientific agreed consensus, nearly consensus about this. So after all, it is one single space-time. Second, the question of causality and causal disconnection, yes, the basic assumption of multiverse assumes causal disconnection, which is part of the artifact of the derivations brought up from the original Hugh Everett states, divided states or proportional states, and also from string theory. We have this disconnection or disconnected states. But again, when you come to consider the matter closely, you find that this causality is not well substantiated. For example, it's mentioned that because the speed of light is limited, therefore we would expect in a very large space causally disconnected regions. Oh yes, but then if you say the universe is eternal, then light must have had enough time to reach everywhere. And therefore, there is no question of disconnection in an eternal universe. Second, quantum entanglement allows some kind of connection. Here, as you know, the quantum entanglement is something which is beyond the speed of light. It is what's so-called spooky action at a distance, which was suggested by Albert Einstein in the 1930s, and it was also verified by Alan Aspect in 1982 already. So this is a kind of also a connection. Third, we have the velocity of gravitational interaction. Although the theory of general relativity of Einstein supposed that the velocity of gravitational interaction is the velocity of light itself, but John Moffat, a well-known physicist working in the Perimeter Institute in Canada, suggests that the speed of gravitational interaction is 10 to the power 20, the speed of light. So perhaps there are other means, other signals which we will discover, which goes faster than light. For tachyons, for example, tachyons go faster than light, although they are not discovered yet. Yes, we can go through detailed arguments, but this will take much time. I just want to mention that there are many objections to the possibility of having many worlds as described by the popular scientists like Max Tegmark, Frank Tipler, and others. I mean, you know, especially young people and people who are from the general public, the laymen, they don't realize what is really scientific, what's not. For example, they say, you may have a person similar to you exactly, like me, for example, but only with blue eyes in another universe existing now. Or as Tegmark put it in one of his articles in Scientific American, saying this, and he is reading the article similar to the article you are reading now. I think this is nonsense. This is nonsense. This is a charlatan work. It should not be scientific, put in a scientific context. One more remark about the cyclic universe. It was mentioned by Enis that the cyclic universe is a multiverse. Actually, it is not. A multiverse, there is one thing which is not mentioned in the talk, that the basic assumption not only says it is disconnected region of space-times, but they say simultaneously existing. That is why when you listen to Tegmark and others who are popularizing this multiverse, they say there are other creatures which are similar to you, existing simultaneously in those universes. The cyclic universe is a universe which starts, develops from a certain state, expand to a maximum size, and then goes on contracting or collapsing again to where it started. And then it bounces. It bounces off the singularity. Just before reaching the singularity, it will bounce. And in a new Big Bang, so to speak. And a new universe is generated this way. But mind you, these universes are not existing simultaneously. They are successively. For example, we have found a student of mine, postgraduate student, Munir Daratka, and myself have found that if you consider a cylindrical, a three-dimensional cylindrical surface in a four-dimensional space-time, and you solve the Einstein field equation, you find possibilities for such a flat universe to collapse. That was our test, actually. And when we worked out the mathematical solutions, we found that such a universe, such a model, will bounce off before reaching the singularity into a new universe. I was surprised. This type of model is the best model which agrees with the Quranic description in Surah Al-Anbiya. يوم نطوي السماء كطي السجل للكتب كما بدأنا أول خلق نعيده. We will fold up the firmament, and then we will start it again as already started the first time. I don't claim that this is what exactly the Quran would like to convey to us. That is the cylindrical model of flat surface. No, not necessarily. But it is one thing which is interesting to look at. And this is a purely scientific work. It's not philosophical. We have worked with mathematical equations and solved the Einstein field equation. Obviously, Roger Penrose, which received the Nobel Prize 10 days ago or so, has also the cyclic universe. It well explained in his book, Cyclic Times. These are not, again, I stress, not multiverse. Even the recreation of the universe, which was proposed by the Mutakallimun, by the way. It was not, I mean, there were perhaps I misunderstood what Anas said, but he mentioned Ibn Taymiyyah on continued recreation, on continuous creation. The continuous creation is not the idea of Ibn Taymiyyah. It is the basic idea of Mutakallimun, Mu'tazila and Ash'a'ira, and especially the Ash'arites. Ibn Taymiyyah was opposing the Mutakallimun, and he severely criticized them. Concerning the Anthropic Principle, I would mention that this principle has been opposed in the beginning by atheists, and they considered it something silly, trying to prove the existence of God by saying that the universal constants are finely tuned. Finely tuned, it means the value is chosen so clearly. And thanks to Anas, he presented the diagram showing what is the probability of having a universe like ours. It's very, very small in probability. So some physicists were unhappy with that in the 1980s. But as George Ellis again mentions or allude to in his article, Scientific American, he says that when they discovered that multiverse can serve atheistic purpose, atheistic goal, they went into back to consider the Anthropic Principle seriously. By the way, Steven Weinberg, who is an exponent of atheist scientists, he always repeats saying that the notion of God does not explain anything. It's useless because I don't know how it cannot explain everything. It explains our existence. But if you like, you don't want to believe in that. Yes, I cannot prove God exists by science or even by philosophy. And the argument given by the Mutakallimun for presenting or for proving that God exists were actually also disputed, let us say. I cannot say refuted, but disputed by serious arguments from the philosophers. So we cannot rely on this approach, actually, to prove God exists scientifically or even philosophically. It's a matter of taslim. It's a matter of submission. If you submit that God exists, if you submit to simple logic that these things which exist around us, we exist, cannot exist without a creator, then creator is a must, definitely. Simple argument. أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. يعني in the Quran, for example, Quran has presented very simple but strong arguments to attract the attention or to turn the attention to facts of life and our existence and how can such thing exist. So fine tuning is, yes, it is one astonishing argument in favor of saying that there is some kind of agency, whether it is personal or impersonal. I'm not imposing the personal picture of God. Most of atheists, actually, they became atheists because of the personal, I believe, of the personal picture of God. Perhaps Einstein presentation himself, the impersonal God, was a step forward to understand religion in more logical terms. Because after all, religion, as you know, contains some illogical terms like the hell and the heavens and how these are not logical. I cannot say it is logical. You either accept it or not, or you leave it. One point I want also to stress is the randomness and purpose. Many people think that if you believe in multiverse, then you believe in randomness, then you don't believe in God. As Enis stressed, I agree here that not necessarily. You can believe in a multiverse. Multiverse is not against religion, but not the interpretation of the multiverse as presented by atheists. Atheists have used this notion, this hypothesis to to point that since multiverses has been existing randomly, therefore there is no God. Randomness does not, and we can prove that philosophically and logically, randomness does not negate the purpose. And although, again, Steven Weinberg, the exponent of atheist scientist, mentions God does not explain, it does explain. And randomness the biological randomness of Darwin, random mutations, and random generations of multiverse does not negate, does not refute the existence of a purpose.
Can you finish in about 3 minutes, Basil?
Thank you. Thank you indeed. As for the conclusion of Enis, that theism implies multiverse, here's an important comment. True, there are several remarks in the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet Muhammad which points to many worlds. These, for example, in one of the Hadith of Muhammad, he says there are other universes in which there is Adam, like your Adam, etc. These worlds have different laws, like hell and heavens, for example. But these are metaphysical, after all, metaphysical worlds that is beyond our scientific consideration. So let's not mix between the two. Let's not mix the metaphysical universe or multiverse with the physical. Theism is not in conflict with the assumption of multiverse. It is in conflict with the interpretation, which makes this assumption a proof for negating the need for a creator. I would say that theism allows for multiverse. Yes, the creator who created one universe can create many other universes. And I find that the theists oppose the hypothesis of multiverse because of the wrong use. Certainly there are some scientific, beside that, some scientific objections to certain types of multiverse. The acceptable type 1, I find, is the one explained earlier. This is what I can accept. And thank you for listening. And thank you, Kelly, for giving me extra 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Basil. Excellent. I'm going to turn it over to Enis now for just 5 minutes, Enis, to respond, and then we'll open it up for questions.
So thank you, Basil, for your useful remarks. Just a few clarifications about Ibn Taymiyyah. I did say, but I didn't say he defends the recreational model, but he thinks that God did create a universe before our universe, and he created a universe before this universe. So God is eternally creating different universes. That's, of course, I'm not an expert on Ibn Taymiyyah. I based this view on John Hoover's PhD thesis on which is published by Brill, Ibn Taymiyyah's Theodicy of Perpetual Optimism. That's at least what I understood from the PhD thesis of Hoover. About whether we should define temporal multiverse as a multiverse, whether cyclic universes are multiverse, it is true. Max Tegmark doesn't consider them to be a form of multiverse. But on the other hand, like other defenders of multiverse, like, what was the name of the guy? The writer of Elegant Universe. Brian Greene, for example, has also 9 models of multiverse he discusses in his famous book, Hidden Reality. Brian Greene, for example, considers the cyclic universes as a part of the multiverse. And some works in philosophical literature, one useful work will be like Mary Jane's works, Many Lies of the Multiverse. She also considers multiverse as a cyclic universe as a multiverse. Of course, it's a matter of semantics. Personally, I would take it like a multiverse because we are talking about completely independent realities which just touch with each other for an instant of time. So that's what I wanted to say. And I agree, Noah, today we don't have any scientific evidence which points to the certain existence of any kind of multiverse except the level 1 multiverse. All the others are based on purely theoretical arguments, which may or may not be true. So that's what I will say. Thank you.
Okay, I suggest we open the floor for questions. It means some of you are going to have to unmute. And if you want to type your questions out, that's fine as well, if you think that would help. Let me start with something while people are thinking. I have a question, Enis, about your no best possible worlds argument. Suppose God creates 100 worlds. Isn't it still possible for there to be a 101st, so you get that no best possible world problem going again? Or if he did it for 1,000, or if he did it for 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 or a trillion or a gazillion, won't there still be one, or maybe even countless many more universes that would be better? Or do you think there's a I don't know, a creatable number of best possible universes that actually solves the problem, so there wouldn't be one more?
Well, I think the way you can defend this argument is by assuming that infinite universes created by God. Basically, God has created every possible universe at which goodness is more, or some based on some criteria. But God has created any universe you can think of. You cannot think any better universe because that universe is also created by God. Maybe Ibn Taymiyyah, I'm not again an expert in Ibn Taymiyyah, but maybe his view is close to this. I'm not, of course, sure, but probably Ibn Taymiyyah, he thinks that God is creating eternally. He's constantly creating different universes. So if God is creating internally, and by the way, he criticizes the Hudus argument, he criticizes the Kalam cosmological argument. He thinks that actual infinity is possible, and God did create really actual infinite of universes. So I think you are right if we are talking about finite number of universes, but if we talk about infinite number of universes, then things change. Like God, you cannot find any universe which is better not created by God. If it is there, then God created that universe.
Okay, all right. All right, so let's turn this over to the audience. Who else has a question?
I have a question, if you permit.
Go ahead, Mehmet.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you. And I have a small contribution and question for Enis. Enis told that I am not a mufassir, but he gave an example from Fahrettin al-Razi, who is a very famous mufassir. I have also another concrete example for what mufassirun or Quranic interpreters think about the verse of Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, as you know, in the chapter of Fatiha. He says that mufassirun had a disagreement on this word, which is alam. Some of them maintained that God has 18,000 universes, and some of them maintain that God has 90,000 universe, something like that. So, but on the other hand, we also know that Mutakallimun found possible for these arguments because they had a special concept for themselves, which is khala, or empty space, which separates one universe from another universe. So in our today cosmology, do we have an empty space which differentiate or separates from one universe from others? So, but if universes are separated from each other, or they are not causally connected, how could we understand that another universe exists? Because we don't have any causal relations to experimentally or to prove their existence by observations. How could we solve this problem? And my second question.
Mehmet, let's let him take that one first, and then you can come back. That's
Okay,
good.
thank you. Thank you.
One big, huge question at a time is probably good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, as I said, while they are causally disconnected at the moment, they may have been causally connected in the past. Actually, in physical universes, they are usually connected in the past. So while we don't have such a like sign, it is possible for you to find some kind of sign, like especially in the cosmic background radiation, which shows that certain two universes separated from each other. So while they are now causally disconnected, they were connected in the past, like in counting inflationary models. They have a common past. Similarly, in quantum mechanical multiverses, the past is same. The universes separate, so the universes have common. In fact, in that one, they share a common past. Not only they are causally connected in the past, they share their past is common. So they are not completely disconnected. So it is possible that we can find some clue of this disconnection. Another way you can argue for multiverse would be if a well-established equations, which is accepted, if they predict existence of multiverse, and if these equations can be independently tested, and the only way you can interpret these equations is only way you can accept this if you accept multiverse, then you will believe in multiverse, even though you don't see them. Currently, we don't have such an equations, but certainly the general equations of general theory of relativity do allow for ripping apart the space-time so they don't interact. But we don't know whether these solutions are true or not. But if we kind of know these solutions are valid, we will believe that there's multiverse, even though we cannot touch it. We cannot have a causal contact with it. Maybe Basil will want to add something, like this is what my opinion.
Yes, I would like to say that this is a very critical and very subtle question about this connection, about the independence. Because as you well know, that even in an empty space, we do have the vacuum fluctuations, what they call the dark energy. And this dark energy is everywhere. Also dark matter, when you consider the dark matter. So first of all, type 1 universe cannot be, the patches, the domains, cannot be disconnected completely, causally disconnected, never. The other types, yes, you're right. Solutions of a quantum, for example, the Everett states, they get split, and each of them is independent. And then M theory and the people of string theory have borrowed the Everett conception, developed it into universes. By the way, many people think that Everett invented the multiverse. Everett did not invent the multiverse. He was talking about the problem of measurement in his 1957 paper. You can go to the paper and read it. It's published in Review of Modern Physics. He didn't talk about multiverse. It is the string theorist who borrowed the idea and developed it into a universe. They can do that, of course, but then you have to assume that a wave function for the whole universe exists. And this is, again, a subtle example. What kind of wave function would describe the macroscopic universe I have now? Even if you consider a microscopic universe at a very start, you have many conditions which will define. One of the major conditions that in order to define a wave function for a quantum system, you must have an external observer. What general relativity says, there is no external to the universe. There is, if you assume a space-time, isolated space-time, you can define as many as you like, million space-time separate. But you cannot say there is an observer outside these space-times, because each space-time has its own observer inside it. It's part of it. So the wave function of the whole universe, although Stephen Hawking worked on it, but still there is a question which is not answered until now. Where is the observer? Yeah.
All right, so I'll come back to you, Mehmet. We have two more people that have asked for questions. We'll start with Mu'taz Hassan. Would you like to ask your question? Are you there, Mu'taz? You have to put you have to unmute, I think. Yeah, you're muted. I may have mispronounced his name really badly, so well, he says he's trying to get unmuted. Can you help him, Mehmet?
Sure, yeah.
He's trying to unmute and it's not working. While we wait for that, Mu'taz, we'll wait for a second. We have a question from Muna al-Salal. Muna al-Salal?
Yeah.
Okay. Muna, where are you from?
Hello.
Yeah,
I'm
Muna.
from Jordan.
From Jordan. Okay. Go ahead, Muna.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm really pleasured for having a meeting and debate with such a great scientist. And I have two questions. The first one, that I've been always heard that our universe had been exploded from a very tiny, dense point in space. So my question is that if there is many other points to create multiverse, or just one point to create all of these universes around? This is my question.
Enis, you want to take that?
Answer myself?
I meant Enis, but
yeah, okay.
Well, there are different ways you can create a multiverse model. So it may be from one single point, or it may be like you may have one big bang and the universe then divides into two different branches. Then it would be like everything will be start from a single point and all the multiverses will come from that point. But you may have like more speculative universes which exist independently and they never have interacted with each other. So there are different versions of the multiverse.
All right, good. Nazif?
Okay, thanks. So I greet everybody. In addition, Enis and Mehmet, my friends Kelly, Basil, and Shuaib. So after this nice talk and commentary, indeed, I have one big question and one very unimportant technical. The big question is about the point of the whole argument of Enis. So initially you said the multiverse is used by the atheist against the arguments for the existence of God, right? But you appeal to it to argue against the problem of evil. This is what I understand from the general project. Okay, but given the atheistic worry or the theistic worry about atheist use of the multiverse, is this worry still legitimate after your argument for the or against the problem of evil? On the basis, if we accept the multiverse, how would we argue for the existence of God? What is your position on that? Is it still a problem for arguing for the existence of God or not? I think you didn't say something on this issue. And a technical question is, as far as I know, there are around 100 fine-tuned ratios or constants in science. Is it possible to reduce them, a few of them, by math or by some logical analysis or by some other scientific tools? This is a question to both. So thanks very much.
Basil, why don't you start with this one and then we'll go to Enis.
should be addressed by Enis, the answer concerning the argument for God. But if we...
Yeah, the first part should, but the second part, I think you might have a lot to say.
Yeah, the second part was about, sorry, Kelly. What was the second part?
Oh, so there are around 100 fine-tuned concepts.
Yes.
Is it possible to reduce them?
Nazif, according to
Dr. al-Tai, I hope you are fine.
Yeah, Martin Rees, the well-known physicist, astrophysicist, we can reduce these to 6 numbers. Perhaps you have read his book, Just 6 Numbers. And yes, we can, because these are the most fundamental constant, universal constants. The other constants may depend on certain what we call transformation properties or representation in the language of group theory. They can get different values, but the most basic constant, velocity of light, the gravitational constant, the coupling of the nuclear forces and the coupling of weak forces and the electromagnetic Coulomb constant. These are the most basic, which can never change. They are invariant.
Right. Sorry.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Enis?
So about the first question.
Can you repeat it again for everybody, roughly?
Yeah. Well,
the
question was this. Well, multiverse seems to be taking out the fine-tuning argument, because if multiverse is true, at least some versions of multiverse are true, then it seems that fine-tuning argument fails. Of course, this can be debated whether fine-tuning argument can be disproved, whether it can be really rebutted by multiverse argument. But even if we assume that it can, which I think some versions can, not all of them, then we will lose one argument in support for the existence of God. But we have a different arguments. For example, if you believe in contingency argument, multiverse has no way to get around the contingency argument. So contingency argument is compatible with single universe or more than one universe. So still, you will have some arguments in support for the existence of God. There are 2 arguments which can be threatened. One of them is this fine-tuning argument. Also, it is relevant for the Kalam cosmological argument, because you argue that actual infinity is not possible, but it seems that if some of my arguments are correct, then actual infinity of universes exists, which means that actual infinite, you must argue that actual infinite is possible. Otherwise, you need to say that also theistic model realism is not possible because it involves actual infinite. So it has potential to get in conflict with 2 theistic arguments. But of course, theism is not subject to just 2 arguments. You have different arguments. One of them is contingency.
If we assume the actual infinity, then the contingency argument would be undermined as well, because there are infinitely many universes, and all contingencies explained by these universes. Then there is no argument left.
I don't think so, because still not everything which is like evil versus doesn't exist. The universes in which there is more evil than goodness. So you can ask why these universes exist rather than other universes. Multiverse itself does not mean that everything which is possible exists and you don't need to explain anything. Still, the question is why these universes exist rather than other universes. Still, you will have the same question. So I don't think that
actual infinity, I mean, infinity in all forms, actual infinity.
Let me ask you a simple question. Do you think that contingency argument is compatible with infinite universe? If you think that it is compatible with, actually most of the people who defended this argument saw no reason to argue that universe must be spatially finite. actually a infinite universe, single universe, can be mapped one-to-one with an infinite multiverse. You know, it's like uncountable infinite. So I don't think that multiverse creates any problem for contingency. If you argue that, then you need to argue that contingency argument is only compatible with finitely spatial universe, which I think you don't have any reason to argue.
So the
probably should stop
there is not
this one because a couple more people still want to ask questions.
sure, but just to clarify, the alternative
Sure.
is that there is nothing, right? This is what you say.
I didn't get that. Huh?
That there is no entity existing in a possible scenario. This is the alternative for the multiverse, so that the contingency argument works.
No, multiverse is not single version. You can have different kinds of multiverses. By saying that multiverse exists, you don't claim that everything which you can think of exists. Actually, in theistic model realism, you say that everything which is compatible with God's nature exists. Everything which God chooses to create exists. But still, some universes, like a universe in which there is pure evil, just evil, this universe doesn't exist. And so you can still have some things which exist and some things which doesn't exist. You can still ask the question, why these universes exist and these universes doesn't exist, for example, or why nothing and this universe. So.
All right, back to you, Muataz.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to thank all of you for this nice presentation, to Dr. Enis and Prof. Basil al-Tai. Really very interesting perspectives for philosophy and physics. My question is, I pinpointed some slides from the Prof. Basil al-Tai that he mentioned the consciousness and the other aspects of cosmic presence. So if he can just explain for us, because he has a very interesting links through his series of posts and books about the Anthropic Principle, especially the participatory Anthropic Principle, which states the intelligent life, consciousness, and the existence. So if that is possible to Prof. Basil al-Tai to enlighten us with his opinion, especially his own opinion.
You're muted, Basil. Basil, you're muted.
Hi, Muataz. In fact, I was thinking of talking about the consciousness, but I found that this will take long time. I am only allowed to talk, so I skipped this part. But basically, the idea is that our consciousness is not an extrapolation of the animal consciousness. It's a unique type manifesting the ability of creation and capability of being transcendental. How can such a consciousness arise in other multiverse is a question, is a big question. Unless we understand how it arises in our universe in the first place. It's a big question here. We don't understand how consciousness arises in our universe. How would we be able to? That was my argument, you know. So it's more like I feel, as I say, Chalantri, to talk about persons like me, as I said, only with blue eyes sitting in another parallel universe. I just want to refute this claim. But much more can be said about it, especially within the quantum mechanical description of consciousness. So please forgive me for being unable to dwell much on or to elaborate much on this point now.
Yeah, that's good enough though. Thanks.
Many thanks. Many thanks. Thanks a lot, sir.
How about Muna again? She'd like to ask a question. Basil, can you turn off your screen sharing?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
And Muna, go ahead. By the way, I'm waiting for everybody to turn their cameras on, their video on, so I can take a screenshot of everybody, if that's okay. Basil, there you go. Abdallah, Ilyas, Kubra, would you mind everyone just putting their, Ali, hello, Ali.
Hello.
Keep them coming, keep your screens on. All right, Muna, why don't you ask your question while people are putting their screens on? Muna, you're on mute.
Yes, sorry, yes. My question was about that, my friend asked me a question a couple of days ago. It was about that if God put his will in the universe and give the instructions and the rules to how to the phenomena happen, and just leave it to go ahead, or just he control everything in every phenomena and every single event in the universe? That's my question.
Who wants to take that one?
I may take this question if you like, Kelly. One thing important to always remember that God is in no time. And we are living in a time, in extension of time. Our universe, by the way, physically is called a time-like universe. There is another universe which rarely considered by physicists, which is the space-like universe. And in a space-like universe, the change or the events happen as you walk, as you move through space. In our time-like universe, events happen while we are sitting in one position, but time is passing. That's why in the Newtonian description, time is like a river. When you compare, when you question about God placing the laws in the universe or sustaining the universe, our time-like universe, you should always remember that God is timeless, as was put by Saint Augustine. The first one perhaps who explained this carefully in his Confessions. A timeless God can do anything. It's something which cannot be described to look like or to resemble anything else. That's why in the Quran it says God, nothing resembles him at all. So you cannot mix the two, you see. But he can control our time-like universe. At the same time, he is in no time. Thank you.
Enis, do you want to address that question?
Pardon? Enis, yes.
That's a no?
No.
Enis, do you want to give us some concluding words? And while Enis is concluding, I'd like Bilal and Ilyas and Ilkner and Husna and Hume, Raygun and Sabria and Harun and Hassan and Kubra and everyone else to turn on their profile so I can get a picture, all right? Waiting. Go ahead, Enis.
Kubra had a question, maybe.
Okay, Kubra?
She has written it there.
Kubra, do you want to ask your question?
Yes.
As you're turning on your video?
Yeah. Hello.
Hi.
I just wrote it here. What thinks Professor Basil about philosophical arguments for theistic multiverses, theistic modal realism from a Kalam perspective?
Sorry. From Kalam perspective, you mean, how can we evaluate the multiverses? Is this your question? Well, Kalam actually assumes certain principles, among which that God is the benevolent, the knows everything, and he is capable of doing anything. So from Kalam point of view, multiverses can exist. Multiverses can have the different laws of physics, yes, from Kalam point of view. But then you have to face the arguments in the philosophical context, which were put by Anas Doko. You have to discuss those points in more detail. This is what we call Jalil al-Kalam. And if you do, then you will have sometimes bizarre results on conclusions, which makes you refuse Kalam altogether, like saying that therefore God does not exist. And this is a point which has came in the 400 after Hijrah, when Al-Qadir Billah prohibited Kalam. So I was going to say to Anas Doko, if you continue like that, one day you will face Al-Qadir Billah of our 21st century, who will put you in prison for your arguments, Kalam arguments about this. Yes. That's my answer.
Seems like it's not part of the best of all possible worlds.
Yes.
I'll come visit you, Enis, if you end up in prison. All right, hey everyone, one last chance. Muqaddas and Ilner and Hamdullah and Ilyas and Bilal, come on. Hassan, give me turn your video on. Let's take a nice picture. People from all over. And Husna's back, which is good. She disappeared. I kept trying to take a picture and you went away, Husna. So I'm glad you're back. All right, everyone give me a smile. Thanks for, here we go. One big smile. Kalam is not dead, although Enis evidently is killing it. Thanks everybody for this. Thanks to our presenters, Basil and especially Enis. I'm grateful for the very thoughtful presentation and the civil discussion. And it's nice to see all of you folks again. I hope, Mehmet, if you do another English one, that you let me be involved again. And I hope I see all of you again on it. Thanks, everybody.